We have about 33 participants in. I'm going to give it a few more minutes. Everyone, thrilled to see you. And actually, I'm sort of checking out the guest list as you arrive. And we have about 34 people in right now, but we have well over 60 registered. So I am going to give it a few more minutes. And we have people joining us from, you know, the Bloomfields, Ann Arbor, Chicago, and California, and Florida, evidently. How cool is that?
I'm looking at an email and I'm trying to figure out, somebody's trying to connect and it's not working and they're texting me. So I'm going to see, I know, Andrew Dombrowski?
Just tell them to go to the Plum Market website.
Okay, go
to virtual tastings on the banner.
Market web site and go where?
Go to the, it says virtual events on the upper right-hand side of the banner.
Events. Events.
And it will lead them to it. Even I can't get lost on it, and I'm hopeless, you know.
Got it, done. And I'm retasting the Mâcon, and it's starting to open up. You're starting to get some fruit on it.
Absolutely, and actually everyone, if you take a look at the chat room, all the wines are listed in order right at the beginning of the chat. And if you have the white Burgundy, the Mâcon, pour it and swirl it around. It actually needs more air than the reds.
I was gonna say, if you've got one of those like pimmers that you use to make soup, put a pimmer in it, you know, zap it to, no, I'm not literally suggesting that, but it could use the level of air that you get out of a blender or a Cuisinart, frankly.
Yes, it could. And I am going to, okay, they're asking me to re-enter. No. So the order is flour and B, Mâcon, and Syrah, and Malbec. And I'll give
Luca.
Everyone. Alrighty. And it looks like we are at 6:30. We'll give it a couple more minutes. I hope everyone's well. We are, if you're not in Michigan, I don't know how Florida could be better than this, because we have no humidity. We have nice, cool, I think 65-degree weather, a breeze and sunshine. It is Michigan at its absolute best.
We finally have airs with smoke levels that you can breathe in California.
Oh my goodness! And can you see the?
We're done with the Orange Sky program that we had going on last week, and we're finally at a stage now where you could actually venture back outdoors and not worry about your health.
That was really scary. I was getting pictures from Tim Gazer, not from Tim Gazer, from Peter Granoff.
Yeah. And, his pictures are much better than anybody else's, so they were probably quite powerful.
Alrighty. Everyone, you can start sipping whichever wine that you have in front of you. If you have all four, the tasting orders in the chat room, but I'll say it out loud too. It is the Flower and the Bee, the Spanish White, followed by the Mâcon, followed by the Syrah, and ending up with the Malbec. And somebody is in Dallas, but from Minnesota. Oh my!
You've got you see, you have all these satellite plum markets everywhere that you didn't even know.
No, I didn't.
The gargantuan Madeline Triffon fan club, which is
I think it's the gargantuan,
not just national.
EG fan club. So we are 45, and we have Amanda Danielson joining us from Traverse City.
Oh, I haven't seen Amanda in years. Hey, Amanda, big hug.
And we have one of my sweet friends, Joyce, is joining us, and Li Meng is there too. Cheers to everyone. I'm sipping a little bit of that really utterly charming, beautiful Spanish White.
The texture on that is amazing. It is like creamy.
Isn't it? Okay, someone else can't get on, so give me 1 sec.
I hope Andrew got on. I haven't heard anything since. So I know he was trying.
Who was going to get on?
Andrew Dombrowski, sommelier guy,
Oh, lovely.
Somm friend. He's not on. Or maybe he sent me an email by accident or text by accident and went, oops. That's possible too.
Okay. All righty, I think I'm going to admit a couple more people, and we are going to start officially. Welcome, everyone. It is actually not even Greek time. It is 6:32. I considered putting a virtual backdrop of either the Parthenon or Santorini behind me because there's a big chunk of my heart in Greece, and I'm waiting to go visit it with Evan and his beautiful wife, Barbara. It hasn't happened yet because they need our tourist dollars, and it's really the place to heal yourself. But that said, I think I will simply admit that I'm happily in Michigan. I'm the fortunate sommelier who gets to lead Plum Market's virtual tastings. And tonight is very special indeed. Tonight is really a celebration of friendship. And I'm actually going to introduce you momentarily to my dear friend, Evan Goldstein, who I knew before I passed the MS exam in 1987, the same year he passed. And I'm going to remind everyone that this is a Plum event. We're thrilled to have people from Bloomfield, West Bloomfield, 2 Ann Arbor stores, our Chicago store in Old Town. But evidently from what we've seen in the chat room already, we've got folks joining us from Dallas, Florida. I know we've got at least 3 to 4 people from California that I know of. And welcome one and all. You know, in times like this, friendship that spans decades, a lifetime really, is something that I know it carries me through uncharted, choppy waters. And I am so grateful to have known Evan since, you know, I was younger than I care to admit because we don't count years, right? It's a non-issue. But we precede 1987, and we were both drinking wine legally at the time. Let's put it that way. So my heart is in this particular tasting, and we absolutely were going to do it chat room style because my heart is also with you. I think those of you who I've known for years know that my heart is still in a dining room floor. If I could be on one right now cutting bread and pouring water, I would be. And we can all say a little prayer to our preferred gods for all the restaurant people who really need our support and help. And if any of you are in a position to hire them, please do, because they handle stress and can multitask better than anyone short of air traffic controllers. It's going to be a while before our hospitality industry, you know, comes back, and these folks need jobs. So that said, just a couple of housekeeping things that if I don't say them up front, I'll forget. You are unmuted. You can unmute yourself, but if you could kindly save that for when we ask for comments, that would be terrific, or towards the end when we open it up for a little bit of a free-for-all. It's just going to cut down on the background information. Joyce, I see you. I'm thrilled that you're here. Thank you for being on. We are going to taste through 4 wines. You may not have all of them. But, you know, by all means, start sipping on whatever you'd like to sip on. Per usual, there's no wine police. I think someone just said, hello from California, yay. Redondo Beach, California, yay. The tasting order is in the chat room. So just look at the chat room. But again, it is, the first one is the Flower and the Bee. The second one is the Mâcon. The third one is the Syrah. And the fourth one is the Malbec. Evan and I will absolutely address the wines and describe what we're perceiving at some point in time. He's more eloquent than I am. It's really cool listening to him talk
Not
about
true.
wine. Yes, it is. And that said, you know, please don't wait to sip on the wine, waiting for us to address it, because especially at the beginning, we want to show lots of pictures tonight. And part of it is just utterly selfish because we're going down memory lane in sort of a timelessly happy way. If you don't see us for some reason, because some people had a problem with that on one of our Brady Bunch style tastings, go up to your upper right-hand corner and, click on speaker view. And then you'll see whoever's speaking, which for the most part will be me and Evan, because good luck in shutting us up, and you will hear us. I was telling Evan, don't worry, we can interrupt each other mid-word if we have to, because we've known each other long enough that we know that we're not insulting each other, we're just completing sentences. And I think that's the beauty about having a friend for a long period of time. So welcome. And I think what we'll do is just start with sharing that beautiful first picture. Evan Goldstein, you know what? I've never even looked at your bio. It's probably 3 pages long, Evan.
It's actually the first thing on it is BFF with Madeline Triffon. That's really all you need to know. But we've known each other. Do you realize we've known each other for longer than we haven't known each other?
Is that true? Well, that's scary. We are older people now,
yeah.
But you know what? We are timeless people, yes. Yeah. Evan is a master sommelier. He is an author of multiple publications, which we'll review momentarily. This is Evan and me back in like 1988, I think, the year after we passed the MS exam. And since there, Evan, for a significant time, worked for Sterling, correct? And the School of Hospitality. Yep. He created his own company with his partner, Lee Meng Stroh, who we'll talk about what they're doing now a little bit later, and it's called Full Circle Wine Solutions. And what have I forgotten that's really notable? Oh, Square One. You worked at Square One before any of that with your incredibly celebrated mom,
my mama,
Joyce Goldstein.
Yeah.
Yes. So this
picture is wild. Evan, what's very cool, aside from the fact that it brings together three of truly the old guard of the Court of Master Sommeliers on the American side, in yourself looking charming and beautiful, myself looking either really tired or stoned or both. And then lastly, Nunzio Aliotto is a dear friend to both of us, and a fellow San Franciscan. And then the two British-looking chap are in fact British. Those are the two essentially founders of the Court of Master Sommeliers. Brian Julian sitting between myself and Nunzio, and Barry Larvin right behind you.
And actually Nunzio, whose family still owns Aliotto's on the Wharf, I don't think he's changed. I think he's changed the least of us. But this is a cheerful picture, and we owe a lot to these two gentlemen. Yeah. Brian and Barry, and you're going to see us talk quite a bit tonight about the Court of Master Sommeliers and that whole journey, because frankly, we were in on it at the very beginning. We were the 6th and 7th to pass the exam, and now there are 160 in North and South America.
Yeah. This is an interesting shot. I think what's fun here, and you can point out a couple, but aside from one of my truly mentoring folks in life, Percival Val Brown, who is sitting between yourself and myself, who I'm still in touch with, who is in his mid-90s and a great-grandfather many times over. You have on your other side, you have the late great Morris Smith.
He was the service guru of all time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then in front of him, you have Fran Kaisela, who was in that initial class, who many people buy imports from these days. And then a few other folks. You could point them out, maybe.
I'd be happy to. We've got Fran Kaisela owns Kaisela Parafis. Here's Barry Larvin again, and Brian Julian, the two British MSs who came over to administer this exam. This is a very interesting fellow. The first person in the world to have both a Master Sommelier and Master of Wine designation, Ron Wiegand. He's still alive and kicking, but under the radar. And Evan, you look very young and charming here. And you look lovely and charming now too. And we have figured out this is breakfast. So look how serious I look and Evan looks. And Tony Taylor, who's one of the 5 of us who were sitting the master's exam because we passed the advance the day before. This is right before they announced who passed the exam, if anyone. So we're looking a little tense. And some market fans, I am very proud to work for Mark and Matt Jonah. Their parents Eddie and Juliet were in this audience. This is at the
Mhm.
Monterey Wine Festival, and I just remembered that. Isn't that something? There are no degrees of separation. Evan maybe put this up. This is, look at the hair, everyone. This is 1987. This is from The Spectator, and I wanted to put it up because it says Detroit. You know, how
We
cool
love
is
it.
that?
We love it.
And okay, now we've got two pictures here, Evan, back to back. You want to tell them what you remember about passing that exam and actually taking the advance?
Oh my God. I
For two of
remember,
us?
yeah, I remember actually first hearing about it in 1986, as a matter of fact, before 87, because I was at a tasting in San Francisco that little did I know when I was invited to it that there were only going to be 2 people invited as guests, and it was a vertical and horizontal across the whole portfolio of Moreau Chablis. The one person was me, and the other person was Fred Dame, who many of you know. And Fred
Here's
had
Fred.
literally, yeah, Fred had literally just come back from London a couple of weeks before, and essentially, as Fred is known to do, kind of shanghaied the entire attention of the table to become a discussion about the court and the programs. And then a few months later, I got a call from Fred inviting me in March of 1987 to come down during the Monterey Wine Festival and take this Master Sommelier program. Not much more information than that.
No, I am interrupting to tell you, he called me 5 minutes before he called you. And the reason I know this is I was taking inventory in the basement of the London Chop House, and he said, you should take this. You'll get through it. No problem. And I said, sure. I put the phone down. I said, what the hell have I gotten myself into? Ring,
and then the
and
next
it was
call you got
Evan
was from
Goldstein.
me, right?
Yes.
I called you and then said, I just got this call from Fred. What do you think? And I think, if I remember, we made a pact that day that we would both go. And if halfway through or partially through or even an hour or two into it, we could look at each other and walk. And that was the covenant that we made that day to attack the Masters. And then, yeah, then we came down. If I recall correctly, there was a group of about 20 of us. Nunzio was in that. Fran was in that. The great Chuck Ferruia was in that. The great Wayne Belding was in that class, et cetera.
Here's Wayne Belding,
yep.
and this is Peter Granoff, and this
Yep.
is, let's see,
Eddie
this is
Osterling
Richard Dean, who,
Roger
God
just
bless his
passed.
soul, recently
Yeah.
passed away. There's Nunzio, and this is Roger de Gorn.
Yep.
And this
Yep.
is Eddie Osterlin, who was the first. By the way, there was a comment. We will absolutely comment on the wines as we go along, but please start sipping because we're going to get through these first
Yeah.
slides. Because I
Thank you
want
for
to show
indulging
you.
us, everybody.
Yes, we want to show you. This is the old guard. Here's Evan, Nunzio, Wayne, Eddie, looking pretty amazing
I know he's
considering
aged
when he
well,
passed.
like a bottle of Bordeaux from the '82 vintage.
And moi. So, and what is this, Evan? Tell everybody.
This document goes back, just to give people a sense of history, we incorporated the Court of Master Sommeliers in the state of California back in, it took 10 years by the time we started getting out of Mass and we did the paperwork, but I just thought it would be fun for everybody to see that the 2 people that actually incorporated the court were yourself and myself.
I don't think the young generation, the 145, may not know this, but that's okay. They are dancing. You know, you're supposed to have the generations that succeed you surpass you, correct?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
exceed you. So anyway, I think it's dead cool that we were there in the single digits.
Yep, yep, and in the moment.
So Evan, if you could tell everyone, I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat, and we're good.
You want to talk about that first wine?
Let's talk. You know what? Yeah, let's talk about that. No, I think you should go ahead and.
What would you like me to do?
I would like you to talk about this picture.
Okay. She's got more pictures.
No,
God help
I found
us.
more pictures. Oh, have I lost my PowerPoint? Hold on just a second. I may have. Oh no, here we go.
Better you than me.
This is a way before.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Picture.
This is in the late 70s when I had sort of decided to go full tilt boogie. I moved to France. I moved to Paris in the late 70s. This Picture on the left is the restaurant that I used to work at before I moved to the hotel and then came back to the restaurant, a little Charente restaurant specializing in food from Charente, which for those of you who know is that area around Bordeaux, the larger region, specializing in everything from snails to eel to all sorts of classic dishes.
Were you cooking at the time?
I was cooking at the time. Yeah, most people don't know that, but long before I was a sommelier, I was a kitchen head, and it was a small restaurant, so we all did everything. The gentleman on the right side, standing next to a very young Evan Goldstein, is a gentleman by the name of Joël Giraudot, who was the chef owner, executive chef owner of that restaurant, and was a disciple of the late, great Georges Marin, who was one of the great mentors of chefs in Paris in specifically, but France in general. And through a friend of a friend connected me with Chef Giraudot, and with whom I worked for several years before being called back to the United States to be a sous chef with Masa Kobayashi at the Auberge du Soleil.
Now, were you speaking French fluently at this time? Because I have to tell everyone that Evan and I, the year we passed the MS exam in 1987, I passed in Monterey. We flew to London that fall. If I remember correctly, I landed, it was the day that the stock market crashed and there was a hurricane. And somehow I made it all the way to Torquay on a train. All the lights were off, and Brian Julian was shocked I made it. But I'm saying this because then we went to London. You took the third part of your exam there.
Yep,
you passed it, and together we went to Burgundy. And the first thing I remember is being in Paris with you, and you're sitting with a dear friend, and you're speaking Parisian French, man. I couldn't understand a word, and I thought I could get by.
Yeah, well, I was very lucky in the restaurant. You know, when I worked there in the late 70s, I arrived thinking I spoke some French, realizing, of course, that they don't teach you slang, and learning kind of on the fly. So by the time you met me, my French was quite fluent and quite slangish at that time. So I think I was speaking French akin, obviously having the strong academic background, but speaking it akin to the way, you know, people, you know, the kind of Greek you say you speak, right? So all that. This first picture on the left, and this is a great cue for everybody to pick up their flower and be trechadura, is taken actually in Galicia. This gentleman standing next to me is the fab Jose Antonio Lopez, who at the time was the winemaker for Morgadillo wine. Some of you might know that, very famous for their Ria Spicious, particularly their Albarino. And this was the last trip that I was on with my wife, Barbara, before we gave, she gave birth to our first child, Elena. Evan, you had very
Wasn't she pregnant like 7 or 8 months pregnant?
This is our last trip. She was going to be grounded, and we were going to be grounded for a long period of time. So we took this trip up to Galicia. We landed in Vigo. We visited restaurants. We ate ice cream at 3 in the morning because it was blood awful hot. And we went and visited with Jose Antonio, who spent 2 days with us, which was fabulous, showing us around the area. Anyway, Galicia, which is located in Iberia and is in the northern part there. It's right towards the Portuguese border. It's hard to tell from that picture. But see, Portugal, you see Portugal's actually south. Portugal sort of sits kind of like that little piece of fruit that like Pac-Man wants to eat, kind of chomping around, sits in the middle, and it's surrounded by, in the north and in the south, by Spain. In the northern part of Spain is this area called Galicia, and the people who live there are called Gallego. And it's a part of Spain that actually looks more like Scotland and England and Ireland. It's very green, radiant, and cool, more so, and is particularly famous for its white wines, of which we're having one, and its lighter high-acid reds. This wine is a grape called Trechadura. It's called Trechadura here. It's called Trajadura in Portugal.
We're here, right? Here we are, Ribeiro.
Yeah, exactly, in the Ribeiro. And the same grape, so you share grapes. Remember, long before there was Spain and Portugal, there was Iberia, right? And grapes have a tendency to be one grape one place and one place another. So the Albarino grape that you know of in Galicia is the Alvarinho grape that you know of is in Vinho Verde and the Minho. The Trechadura grape that you know in Spain that we're having here is the same as the Trajadura grape that you find in Portugal that is part of the blended wines.
By the way, Evan, it's a good thing you're so sweet, and I love you, because he also speaks Portuguese fluently, which is, verging on obnoxious.
No.
But he shushes very well.
Yeah, shus and just, because that's how I speak Carioca, Rio de Janeiro, Portuguese. Anyway, what's very cool about this is it's very rare that you get an opportunity to try a pure.
Everybody needs to mute themselves. Kelly, are you muted?
Sorry.
Don't forget. No.
That's all right. You can hear more if you're muted.
Yeah.
Anyway, Trechadura is a grape that you rarely find isolated, and it's usually blended with Albarino to make Rias Baixas wines, along with other grapes too. But it's rare that you have it by itself. One, because it's it doesn't age as well as say Albarino does, but it's also glorious in its youth. So for those of you who haven't sucked down your entire first glass of it, the name Flower and Bee is actually, I don't want to say it's onomatopoetic, but the wine is extraordinarily floral, and it's freesia, and it's honeysuckle, and it's plumeria.
It's even gardenias,
and gardenias, yeah, and it's got all of that just sort of exotic Hawaiian flower truck meets whatever, I mean, kind of thing going on there. And at the same time, it's got the honeysuckle, creamy, beeswaxy character that you find in wines of similar style, like Viognier, like that. But the Trechadura, again, presuming you haven't had it pure before, will give you that same sort of gras, that textural element that the French would call it.
When he said gras, he means like a fatty texture. Actually, you just said Viognier. It reminds me of that softness that Viognier has. It's not acid deficient, and it's certainly long and mouth-watering and lazy, but my God, is it charming, and it's dangerous. I mean, I could drink this,
Yeah, all day, all night, and it would go so well with so many kinds of foods, whether the weather warms up and you're out on a boat, maybe somewhere on Torch Lake having a picnic and drinking this down as opposed to something out of a can, or you're having some friends over al fresco and just sipping, or whether you're having a lot of more exotic foods, that this wine would pair well with so many like South Asian cuisines and so much
you ripped the words out of my little
cuisines
brain.
And things like that are just powerful. It comes off of some older vines, granitic soils, which is very good. Granite and wine like each other really well. And what's interesting, I don't know if you have a picture of it here, it's hard to talk from the back, but the vineyards here are terraced on what they call socolos.
Yep, here we go. Can you see that? And here we go. Here's another obvious view of it.
And socolos in this part of the world are the same things that if you're in the Douro in northern Portugal, that they would call patamares or patamares.
That sounds Greek.
Yeah, I know it does. Pame, right? That you would see there. But and they're at about 500 to 1,000 feet of altitude, which gives you that cooler climate, the longer growing season, and brings up that slightly, I don't want to call it shrill acidity that you find there, but there's definitely freshness in this wine on top of that sort of zoftic, floral, fruity, stone fruit, apricot, nectary kind of character you find in the wine.
It's positively delish, Evan. Thank you for picking out this.
No worries.
I truly love it. And we are going to go to, I think this is square one next, before we do anything else. Because that was, that's where I celebrated my my passing the MS exam in 1987. I will never forget being in that beautiful dining room.
We were 3 years old.
Yes, and Joyce Goldstein sent me out, and there she is. Isn't she glorious? She looks like a movie star, and she hasn't changed one iota, and she's still kicking out cookbooks.
Yeah.
This is Square One in San Francisco, and Joyce, knowing I was a vegetarian, sent me out this beautiful dish of house-made veggie pasta with potatoes, and I'd never had that combination before. And Joyce, you opened my mind to the fact that I needed to pay more attention to food. Wow. Tell us about this great restaurant.
These were very seminal times. Square One, when it opened up on May 14th, 1984, I remember the day to the day, was very much of a seismic shift in a city that, with the exception of, a couple restaurants here and there, most notably probably Zuni Cafe, for those of you who've been to San Francisco, was sort of cutting edge. We were doing food from the literal, TTORAL, Mediterranean and serving items like couscous when most people couldn't spell them.
Oh, you mean like
And
coastal Mediterranean?
all over, yeah. So it was literally
Yeah.
North Africa, it was Greece,
Mhm.
it was the Middle East, it was southern, it was Italy, it was southern France, it was Spain, it was Portugal, it was Turkey, it was all of that, and serving dishes from everywhere. It had a menu that was a la carte that changed every single day, and every day was literally an exploration on a geographical map, both in terms of food, but also in terms of wines. And we were very true to showing wines that were appropriate for the area, appropriate for the food. And we sort of rode two rails. So one side of the rail meant that we were pouring by the glass at the time, you know,
No,
Dow
wait a
Portugal.
minute. I remember what you were pouring because I was there helping you take inventory one day when 5 to 10 cases of Foreman Chardonnay came in, delivered by, wait for it, Rick Foreman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
himself. No, we were very lucky. The other side of the coin was, aside from the cool European wines that we were showing, is that we decided from day one that we would be sort of a go-to destination restaurant in what was becoming a burgeoning California restaurant scene. Prior to that, it was, you know, it was a handful of wineries and Bob Red and Bob White Mondavi in Magnum bottles. But a lot of these so-called boutique California crafted bespoke wineries were only sold by mailing list and direct to consumer out of cellar. We were the first people getting, whether it was Rick Foreman or, God bless his heart, Al Bronstein on Diamond Creek, or Dave Raffinelli, or Joe Swan, or Tom Burgess, whose you know, winery just sold 3 days ago, and getting those wines on the wine list day one.
But I have to say that Evan also, I was lucky enough to visit Square One when you were doing a Burgundy dinner, and I came, if you remember, with the late, great Max Pincus, who was the then owner of the London Chop House. Some of you may be on who remember those days.
Max and Laney.
And we brought you a bottle of wine as a gift, and I think you have it. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment so everyone can see.
It's hard to tell, but this is the bottle. This is the bottle of wine itself. It's a old Giacosa Barbaresco 1978 vintage. Absolutely
Show
delightful.
the label again. The label says, the strip label at the top.
Oh, the strip label at the top shows where it came from, which was inventoried from the London Chop House.
From the London Chop House. Isn't that, I don't think I have any left.
And it was also add Madeline, it was opened with
a London Chop House corkscrew. I think you and I have the only two left.
I have about 10. So if you ever need another one, you let me know.
So if you are
kind enough to gift me.
No, if you are wondering why Evan has a London Chop House corkscrew, it's because he came to work the floor. So before we talk about that, I want to show you this. There's my beautiful, sweet, brilliant friend, Joyce Goldstein. This is her being a badass, excuse the vulgarity, in the kitchen. This is her probably
first Square One book, Mediterranean Kitchen.
The Mediterranean Kitchen. And this is her latest book, The Jam Session. I adore her food. It is, you know, being Greek, you know, I totally relate to it. I think, Joyce, unless I'm mistaken, you always use water as a base for your soups instead of broth, and there's just a purity, and your recipes work. So big hug, and it's not virtual. Greeks don't do virtual. So I want to, I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone to pick up the next wine. Do you mind if I do that, Evan?
Go for it. No, please do.
Because I think they're probably waiting for me to share another wine, and it's going to be the Mâcon. Those of you who have
Mâcon-Milly-Lamartine.
Yes. Can you say that again nicely and slowly?
Mâcon-Milly-Lamartine.
So it's not Milly, it's Milly.
Milly. The two L's are like a double, it's almost like a double Y. Yi.
And it is, this is a wonderful producer, though it's a bloody mouthful. It's Héritiers du Comte Lafon.
Yep.
And those of you who, we're going to look at a London Chop House wine list momentarily, but I just like to remind us all, those of us who are spoiled to death drinking white Burgundies 25 years ago, this Lafon was known for Meursault. So here we are in Burgundy, and this is a family known for the southern end of the Côte de Beaune, but Dominique Lafon went to the Mâconnais. And those of you who have been drinking Mâcon, you may not even know it, no Puy Fuisset. And he started his new venture, because he took over his family business in 1987, making Merceau in the Côte d'Ivoire. But he was the first owner, winemaker, notable person from the Côte d'Ivoire to go down and recognize the potential.
Who was
of
not a
Mâcon-Milly.
negociant. There were people,
Yes.
there were some of the larger wineries were doing it, but he started, I don't want to call it a trend, it's not a trend, but he started a movement because the land in the Côte d'Or is so expensive and in the Côte d'Ivoire is so expensive, and Burgundy prices, as all of you know out there, are so expensive. He wanted to, on a very for the people thing, be able to go out and produce high quality wines from grapes that were not expensive. So he started this movement of people moving into the Mâconnais, into the Côte Chalonnaise, et cetera, and producing wines using classic Burgundian techniques and oak barrels and all of that into an area that I don't want to say it was a throwaway area, but had never been given that level of royalty before and attention before. And this wine speaks volumes to the fact that if you didn't know this wine was a Mâcon wine, you would think that it was from further north because the pedigree on it is stupendous.
Now, the reason we're tasting this is because in my first job in the basement of the Renaissance Center, in a restaurant that doesn't exist anymore, La Fontaine, I got to taste all these great white Burgundies. They were affordable. And I remember imprinting on Puligny-Montrachet, though I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember the grower, and Courtois Charlemagne. And here's the outfit I was wearing.
I love that outfit.
At the time, I have to tell you, it's the most comfortable thing I've worn in my life. It was black
at the
knit.
Renaissance, yeah.
Yes, I was in my 20s, so I could get away with wearing it. You'll notice this. Oh my God, I'm embarrassed that I'm wearing a Tastavin.
Not an ashtray, people. It's
not an ashtray.
Little wine tasting thing.
And I think I have to let a couple people.
I think, can I share a little Burgundy story while you're going through this as well too? And I want to pick up where you left off. So not only did, were we in Paris after the exam in London where I was passing, I told you that because we decided we would just add on some days in Burgundy because hell, we were there already in France. And we went down there, and because I had the privilege of passing, we went out for a very fancy dinner, and I said, let's get the wine list. You pick whatever you want, da, 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 da. And we went in there, and they handed the wine list to me. I handed it back to you. The waiter came back to take the order. He looked at me. I pointed my hand over there. She was ordering. He continued to look at me. She ordered. He verified the wine with me, brought the wine out to me, tasted the wine to me. I passed my tasting glass to you, and he continued to be absolutely incapable for the rest of the evening, apoplectically, that a woman, God forbid, could actually navigate a wine.
He wasn't judgmental about it. It was just not in his DNA. It was alienation. And you were, if you remember correctly, I didn't take it personally.
I was indignantly pissed off.
You were indignant. I thought it was funny. I really did. And remember who sent us to the restaurant? You can all be very, very jealous about this because Evan had arranged a tasting with, do you remember Dujac?
Yeah.
With Dujac, right?
Jacques Saisse, yeah.
Jacques Saisse, and he set up the reservation for us. But yeah, in those days, ladies in the wine list were just not done. It wasn't part of reality. And working at the London Chop House, I remember clearly actually coming back from that trip and thinking, I can't assume who is ordering the wine. So this was the genesis in my heart. And at the Chop House, we had this massive wine list, and the wine, menu, and the wine list was in the middle, asking which of you would like to order the wine, or are you collaborating on the selection? I get like 2 points for that.
You get mega points. What's interesting about this wine, and we all have our Dominique Lafon stories, because I was buying, Meursault-Le-Perrier and Meursault-Claude Labarre for, peanuts back then. The wines were so relatively inexpensive, back at the time. But this wine, I think, shows so well for people who are not super familiar with so-called Burgundian, old world, styled Chardonnays, sitting on the lees, catalytic, slightly reductive by nature. The wine is just starting to really open up and show the generosity of its fruit, but also showing what that French terroir and all that.
I know I have to define what you just said, Evan, because that's important.
Yep.
He's talking about the wine having a richness from the extended lees contact. And reductive just means that it needs air. That's why, if those of you were on early, I said, make sure you pour this wine in your glass. Because when I first opened it, the nose was just closed and a little funky, to be honest with you. But now it's warmed up, and it is, these two people are making, you know, pure examples of French Chardonnay. It's quite that simple. This is Dominique Lafon, the legend we're talking about. And this is his winemaker, Caroline Gone, who, by the way, he didn't just, you know, hire. She's been with him for over 15 years. And I have to tell you, Evan, I listened to an interview with him that was done recently. He hired her. He had 3 people apply for the job. They all were complimenting the hell out of him. And she started telling him everything that was wrong about the wine.
I love it.
God, I want her. And to this day, you know what he says? Between the two of them, there is no politeness regarding quality. I get chills thinking about it. They are so quality driven.
It's so spot on. And then, first of all, it's a treat to see this picture. When I met him, he had this golden mane of hair like Fabio or something like that. It was a trip. But, you know, his style is so uniquely imprinted to who he is. I mean, he leaves his wines, for those of you familiar with the Chardonnay winemaking process, this sort of Syrah, this on the lees thing, which sort of is when the yeast cells die during the fermentation, they rest at the bottom of the barrel. If you agitate them and stir them up in a process called bâtonnage, you add character, you add texture, you add flavors as the cells sort of incorporate and break down into the wine. He leaves his wines on the yeasts for probably, arguably, wouldn't you say, Madeline, 3, 4, 5 times more time than a
minimum of 8 months, working, you know, pushing a year according to the stat sheet. This, by the way, does it get more beautiful or pastoral than this?
Oh no, it's gorgeous. But his big wines, his Merceau, is his bigger wines. He leaves those on the lees for 2 years.
Yes, and you know, also I remember at the Chop House, I had to explain to people why the Lafon Merceau had stuff floating around in it, because he wasn't finding it at the time. So those were lees. He would just gently rack the wine, remove it from the lees. So having that little floaty stuff in there, like cigarette ash, was not a bad thing. So
not at all.
I've got to tell you, to me, this needs air like a red. It drinks better at like 55 degrees.
Well, as it warms up and as it opens up, it's getting better. And this is a great teaching moment for everybody out there, that superb Chardonnay should be treated like a red wine, as far to the fact that you should actually decant it. You should take it out of the bottle, you should decant it and pour it out of a decanter, because the wines are essentially great red wines in white wine clothing.
So I will encourage anyone who's got red wine in front of you to start tasting it. But we are going to talk a little bit more story. And if we run 15 minutes late tonight, I'm sorry, but you know.
Indulge us, right?
Indulge us, yes. I have to show you, this is, remember Tony Taylor in the picture when we were sitting at breakfast, one worrying who was going to pass the MS exam? Here he is. Evan tripped over him in the Rhone. Where were you, Evan?
I was in Queyron in the southern Rhone at a weekend wine festival with my good friend Michel, and we're just bouncing around, and some guy makes eye contact with me wearing a UCLA baseball cap and starts walking towards me. And this is like in the middle of nowhere, southern Rhone last summer, and just looked at me and he goes, "Evan," and it was Tony Taylor. There he is on the right-hand side.
There are no degrees of separation in the wine business. And here he is in this competition I was in, the best French wine sommelier in the States. Like I did well, which shocked me because I'd never met another sommelier. This is Julia Child. I wish I had the picture. She was a judge of me standing next to her, because I was literally craning my head to look at her. And we're going to talk Chop House now, Evan. But before we get to your work in the floor, I wanted to show you these 2 pictures, because this is, you know, the glamour shot with the Tesla Pichon Lalonde. But the reason I'm showing you this is, by the way, the second most comfortable outfit I ever wore. It was a little tuxedo dress. This was the wine cellar at the London Chop House, and you really couldn't be a tall human and enter it without hurting yourself. So Evan's a little taller than I am, but we claim Roger de Gorme could fit in here, by the way.
Larry Stone.
that Larry Stone. So we're, you know, we're the better contingent of MSs who could fit into the chop house cellar.
Cav, yeah.
And so you work the floor. Everyone start, if you've got the Syrah, go ahead and start sipping on it. But tell people why you were working the floor at the London Chop House.
I was working the floor at the Chop House because after that experience in March of 1987, when Madeline passed, and she is being extraordinarily timid in telling you that she was the first American to pass on American soil ever as a master sommelier.
Merci.
She was the second woman ever and the first American woman to pass the master sommelier exam, and is truly a mentor and a guiding light, a North Star for all women aspiring in the field of sommellerie and in wine expertise in general. The floor of the Chop House was dear to me because after I didn't pass all 3 sections, I passed my tasting and I passed my theoretical, my knowledge part. I didn't pass service. And I didn't pass service in part because being an owner sommelier, I wasn't working the floor regularly the way you were doing it. It's like, Evan, these people are VIPs. Can you go over and talk to them about the extra expensive wine on the wine list? I'd go over it. I was an intermittent sommelier, I guess is best. And I think the British sort of were able, as they always are, to figure that out and say, yeah, it would be unfair. It would be sending the wrong message to pass this person in his service when he's not quite ready yet.
So Madeline, what outfit did you have when you
I was probably wearing a very, at the time when I took my exam, I was wearing probably a relatively casual outfit because we were at the forefront of the so-called casual elegance movement.
But at the Chop House, what were you wearing?
At the Chop House, I had to wear a suit. I wore a tuxedo. I wore the appropriate attire. And anybody, and I had a newfound respect for Madeline, even more so than I did at the time, because I always tell people that anybody who could work the floor at the Chop House could work the floor anywhere in the world. Because what it's impossible to tell here is that the tables in the middle there, about halfway through service, are removed and they put a dance floor out. There's a band that goes in the back there and everyone gets moved around. So not only does the spacing become tighter, you need to relearn your table numbers because somebody who might have been sitting in that table over there is now over at a table over there. And it was unquestionably the most challenging floor experience I could ever imagine working. So I just went into, I'm sure I made lots of mistakes, but I just went into my mode and tried to do the best job I can, but I had the best
I want everyone to know that not only did he like turn around in a couple months past the MS service in London, no less, right? But for the next 2 years, I had regular Chop House customers sitting here in the booths, you know, back here was Siberia when you sat with people you didn't want to be seen with. And they would ask me, where's that charming young sommelier friend of yours? You know, Evan, I think his name was. So you made an impression. And look at what we were pouring by the glass, Evan. Look at these prices. Taittinger Blanc de Blanc for 21 bucks.
Unbelievable.
The house sparkling wine from the Loire was $5. Stag's Leap SLV for $9. And these were 6 ounce glasses.
Unbelievable. You know, it just speaks to the fact that, you know, people, you know, we're so fortunate to have gone up there. I mean, I remember like you pouring wines that are, you know, today 8 to 10 times what they cost now. And we're, you know, we're my regular by the glass pours or sat on the wine list for, you know, $18, $25 at the time. It was
so
crazy.
If you have terrific eyes, there's the Merceau Perrier vintage 1984 for $67.75 because I marked things up exactly. And this is the next wine we're going to talk about. And actually, I made a mistake here. I should have called it Rhône, not Côte du Rhône, because this includes North and South. And we've got a slew of Rhône producers of Hermitage, Cornas. We're talking Vidal Fleury, Guigal, Noël Versailles, Jamais. And that's what I imprinted on when we were thinking Syrah. There is not a single Syrah on this wine list from the New World. And there is a huge vertical of, I don't think so. Oh, no, I lied like a dog. Here we go. Bonnie Doon and Ojai And the
Yeah,
Bonnie Doon's pretty expensive for the time, 35.75, but
the early guard of the Rhone Rangers.
the early guard of the Rhone Rangers. So the reason Evan and I, we picked out these categories, by the way, because these are categories we loved, and both of us adore Washington State Syrah. And what if you've got the third wine, the Gramercy, this is made by a friend of ours, Greg Harrington, who was like I wrote it down, I think he was 16th
Greg worked at Square One. Did you know that?
No.
Yes, Greg. Greg was, after I left Square One to go do my Seagrams and my training and my educational stuff, we were blessed to continue with that quality wine program and have a progression of sommeliers, including Peter Granoff.
Peter Granoff, I knew worked there.
And Greg Harrington, who worked there for a time as well before he headed north to Washington State.
And he created this Syrah, by the way, because he and his wife fell hopelessly in love with Washington State wine growing region. He said 5 to 10 years before they actually intended to move there, and they were both successfully working in Manhattan. She in investment finance, and Greg in directing a wine program that I think
Be Our Guest. He was running Be Our Guest program back then.
Yes, and yes. I have to say, Pam hides in plain sight. He calls her the brains, and the website calls her the brains, because she was very successfully working at JP Morgan, and then created in like recent memory her own company and an executive search company. And she claims that she doesn't provide any support to Greg other than business and helping to buy vineyards, but I'm sure that she has impeccable taste. And I just want to remind us where we are. Yeah, so we're north of Oregon, we're east of the Cascade Mountains, in an area that for all practical purposes is a desert. Their winery is located in Walla Walla.
And what's interesting for people to know is that Walla Walla, maybe if you were going to tell them this, that you can tell me to shut up. But Walla Walla sits literally, it straddles the border. So the lion's share of Walla Walla is on the Washington side. But there is a fairly significant piece of Walla Walla that sits on the Oregon side of the border and is essentially a nested AVA called the Rocks of Milton Freewater, which is where a lot of the buzz that Walla Walla is getting is generated from. And there's a number of
darling, your memory is still much better than mine. Evan, I can be in his slipstream because I have to write it down, and he just pulls it out of his memory. But look this is
a great shot.
Oh my God!
This is on the Washington side, by the way. Yeah, for sure.
This is on the Washington side, and you have this combination of, this you have to irrigate. They do something called central pivot irrigation. So if you go up in a plain, when they've planted vegetables and fruit, they have these like circular pivots that go around. So you see these circles of green in the sea of yellow, because you have blazing sunshine east of the Cascades, and this is their estate vineyard, which I tortured them today, and they sent this to me. And the wine you're drinking comes from both the Yakima, so several vineyard sites east of the Cascade. Here are the Cascades. All the rain drops as the clouds go over the Cascades moving east. And this is where the winery is located in Walla Walla. And I just thought the winery was so cool looking. I wanted to show you this picture. But as far as the wine itself goes, we're talking about a grape variety that Evan and I'm just going to say it, Evan, it drives us nuts that more people don't drink Syrah. Here's Greg, by the way, isn't this a cool tasting room?
Yeah, very much so.
Warm and eclectic it is. But, when you play with this wine, and by the way, the Chicagoans have the 2016, the Michiganders, Evan and I have the 2014, and you made a cool comment about the 14. What did you say? That it was unusual?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, for those of you, there's like a flip side to everything. And some of you are saying, well, I don't have the current vintage, the minute more current vintage. But what a treat to drink a extraordinarily well-made, well-architected example, and a spot-on example, I would say, of a Washington State, Eastern Washington Syrah with some ale too. So, some of the more plump, young fruit character may have sort of sinewed out and leaned out a little bit, but you trade that in for additional bottle bouquet, more of their sort of like sanguine and meatier notes are starting
yeah.
to come through, and it's showing beautifully today.
And if I smell it and taste it, I mean, remember we talked about the Syrahs on the Chop House list. We're talking, Hermitage, Croz Hermitage, Cornas, Saint Joseph. You put your nose in those and you have this shocking aroma that I have this theory actually alienates some Americans because it's all about this combination of stuff that we don't think of together.
Yeah.
Smoked meat. Michelle's on tonight. She calls it the Jimmy Dean effect. The smoked meat.
Yeah,
And,
that's
and pepper and herbs, right?
Yeah, the garrigue and everything. But that's cool climate. That's truly what you call cool climate Syrah. What's interesting here is you've got, because again, Washington State is much further north than California, right? So you're sharing a latitude that is more akin to, say, France and the Northern Rhone than we have in California, where it's warmer and blousier and all that. But you do get, as you know, if you've been to the eastern part of Washington in the summertime, it's hotter than, freaking craziness there. So you get sort of this wonderful conflation of old world style, longer growing season, and the birthings, if you will, of the marks of some of those old world Syrahs, but with the generosity of new world sunshine and new world richness.
So note to self, you think you don't like New World Syrah, you haven't trumped up to Washington State, because honest to God, when I put my nose in the first time, a glass of, by the way, Gramercy Cellars, Gramercy Park, named after his little New York heart, and Lower East Side, Lower East. This is a label he created for value with a capital V, wines that overperform in their price points. I put my nose in a glass of one of his premium Syrahs called Lagnac. And my God, it was New World Northern Rhone. And I thought I have never smelled that before. So Greg makes several Syrahs. And before you comment, I want to say, by the way, if you're sitting there going, I don't like Syrah, I want Cabernet. Greg admitted in person that he wasn't going to make any Cabernet. And then he realized he could actually really fund the winery more easily if he made Cabernet. So he makes a value Lower East Cabernet, but he also makes a premium, ultra premium, like $80 on the website, Cabernet-based blend. Sorry, go ahead.
No. And I was going to say, and for those of you who haven't also explored Washington State Cabernet, particularly those coming off of Red Mountain in that part of the world, that's very much a eye-opening experience too, bridging, if you will, the gap between Bordeaux lovers and New World winemakers. But I just wanted to say that for those of you who are out there and you are pining for that sort of more Northern Rhone, cracked black pepper, bacon fat, lavender sort of thing going on there, the wines that come from the southern part of Walla Walla in Oregon, on the Oregon side, from the rocks, whether it's from Pepperbridge or whether it's from Cayuse or the Walls, or even some of the stuff that Greg makes on the more premium end, those wines tend to show more of that classic Northern Rhone style. And when you blend between the northern and southern sides of the Walla Walla area, appellation, is when you can kind of fine tune that to exactly what you want to make.
Everyone's being very patient with us because we're not letting you comment quite yet. Gee, I mean, I frankly could have backed out of this and let Evan just share his heart and mind with you for 2 hours, but I think it's more fun if we're together. We are going to have to start tasting the last wine before I get shoved online. But you will notice the book on the right says The Wines of South America by Evan Goldstein. But I want to mention this little book that I have several copies that I hand to people when they want to know how to work the flora, which frankly is going to become more and more an important subject since nobody can work the floor right now. But you are really the first person of note to write a book on service, Evan, before the court came out with their standards and before, who's our dear friend
Danny
in New
Meyer.
York? Before Danny Meyer. So 5-star service by Evan Goldstein.
Yeah, there's a few copies of this on the internet that you could pay ridiculous amounts of money for. I think you and I have the last handful of copies, but this book was essentially a compilation of a monthly article I wrote for Santé magazine when it was in its heyday about varying aspects of dining room service.
I remember that, but you have to tell us, how the hell did you write a book on South America, and tell us about the wine that we're drinking.
Yeah, the South American book motivation was sort of twofold. Number one, I had been at the time doing a lot of work down in South America as part of the first company that I co-own with Li Meng called Full Circle Wine Solutions. We represent various trade associations around the world, and we were fortunate enough to be working with wines of Argentina, wines of Chile, wines of Uruguay, and wines of Brazil, all of that. So I was down in South America a chunk of time. But truth be told, our daughter, Elena, got into a very ridiculously expensive school. And because she got in early, we lost any scholarship leverage that we had.
I did not hear this story.
Yeah.
This is new to
and
me.
because she also decided that she didn't want to play softball anymore, any athletic scholarship that she had after a couple of conversations with the softball coach that I had vanished. So all of a sudden, we needed to find a little extra money quickly. And I decided to do two things. Number one, much to my chagrin, liquidate part of my wine cellar, which I did. But number two was like, I got to write another book, because I had just come off of two and I had a very good relationship with University of California. And I'd kind of written everything I had to say. You know, it's like, I didn't want to write Toy Story 3 and be known as that guy, right? It's like Perfect Pairings and Daring Pairings.
Well, we haven't talked about Toy Story 1, but keep going, right?
So my wife, Barbara, said, you know, well, you're down in South America a lot. There's got to be enough to say about writing a book there. So I thought about it, and I was like, I wonder what's in there. And I did an analysis of the competitive space, and there was literally like
Barbara gets the credit.
Always does, always does. So that gave birth to that. Between the knowledge I had, a lot of tastings, a lot of wine shipped to me, and several additional trips I made down to South America where I piggybacked other businesses and things together. It ultimately resulted in Wines of South America, which, you know, while it's out of print and has been for a while, because to update it would be more work than I could possibly imagine. It's been a tremendous book. It's written as evergreen a way as I possibly can. I mean, you can't change appellations changing and vintners moving around.
If you go on Amazon Prime, which we're all surgically attached to, you can get it from other sources. So, you know, I'm just going to nudge you into talking to the Malbec. So we are in Argentina, which, by the way, I have never traveled to South America with Evan. It's not that he didn't invite me to go to Chile and Brazil and Uruguay, but I did go, thanks to Wines of Argentina, to Argentina. So we have both been to Mendoza, and this baby is from the Luca, is from the Uco Valley, right?
And the Uco Valley, Mendoza is obviously the heartbed and lion's share production of both Malbec and of Argentinian wines themselves. It's broken into two areas. This is the Uco Valley area, which is sort of the it girl of the modern age. And this is where you're sort of at higher altitudes. I mean, it's all high altitude down in Argentina. But
Evan, correct me if I'm wrong. That Uco can nudge over 5,000 feet above sea level, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, the highest vineyards in the Uco Valley are even higher than that. You move further north, up into Jujuy and Salta, you're talking 9,000 to 10,000 feet above sea level. This is Laura Catena, the great Laura Catena, who is taken over from her father, Nicolas, who is really the Nicolas Catena is to Argentina what Robert Mondavi is to California in terms of really being the guiding light of modern premium wines.
And she lives how many blocks from you?
Probably about 15. And in fact, Luca, which is named for her oldest son, Luca and my son Adam, our son Adam, went to school together in high school and used to hang out together back in the day. So this
no degrees of separation in the wine business, man. And is this not the best shot of vineyards in the Andes?
Oh, it is gorgeous, but absolutely shows you that the areas of the Uco Valley literally abut the Andes. And that is not a Adobe Photoshop shot. That is your
real.
sort of, it's a real, and I would say, dare I say, typical shot of an Uco Valley towards the west, looking towards the Andes thing there. This particular wine comes from vines that are approximately, 51 years or so of age average. It is pure Malbec. It comes from two IGs, designated areas in Paje Altamira, or Altamira, but it's Paje Altamira is the technical name for it, and Gualtarají, pronounced Gualtaraí, but pronounced locally as Gualtarají.
Oh, I've been slaughtering that. Okay,
yeah, I know. Which are the two main areas. And it's a selection of some of their best lots that she can find and produced in the best things. And it's, you know, considered without question one of the most iconic Malbecs coming out of Argentina. If I'm not wrong, it's been on the top 100 list of Wine Spectator a couple of times. Aside from the only thing, my only criticism of it is that the bottle, if you pick it up at the wrong angle, could give you a hernia. It's pretty one of those big bottles, heavyweight bottles. But the wine is spectacular. It's all of the inky dark color, the violets and floral and fennel and plum and blackberry.
And the mouthfeel, I'm going to interject,
Yeah.
is a shocker because it's like drinking satin. And that
Yeah.
combination, what Evan said, of this florality on the nose, no green elements, just beautiful flowers. It looks like young Cabernet, and it drinks like silk and satin. That is Malbec. And somebody asked, how does Cahors differ from Argentine Malbec?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Malbec literally translates colloquially as bad mouth. Mal is bad, bec is local for mouth. Yeah, and in that part of the world where you're at lower altitude, cooler temperatures, etc., it is very rare historically that you could make a ripe, fleshy, flavorful wine from a grape that typically was bad mouth. However, in Argentina, where you change the parameters around it, you're at higher altitude, you get more UV exposure, the grapes get phenolically riper at lower alcohol levels because of the diurnal exchange, the difference between the cold
daytime
colds and the hot hots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, you get this richness and development that you are just unable, except in the hottest of years, to get in France. So literally, it's like two different animals. The other thing that's important to note, and Laura would beat me if I didn't say this, is that—
She's too polite to beat anybody.
No, trust me, she would beat me up. Trust me, we know each other that well. Is that the clones, the selections of fruit, the plant material that they use in Argentina dates back pre-phylloxera. So remember, all of these grapes came over before the phylloxera scourge. So at this point in time, after that grape had been planted for a long period of time, and the people at Catena, God bless them, went out and selected and reproduced and populated the best clones, if you will, or selections that became clones in the vineyard, this plant material is now actually going back to France to repopulate vineyards in France with original old first edition, if you will, plant material that they had over there. So they have the original plant material, they have the best selections, and they've got it in the right circumstances.
So there is a reason. This is not, you know, I'm going to interject and say, as someone who is not nearly as intimate with you as this subject, that to me, if it's from a respectable winery that has good representation in the United States, these wines over-deliver in their respective price points. So Absolutely. This is like, if memory serves me, we sell it for in the 30s, but you can find Malbec, you know, under 20 bucks. You can find Malbec at 50, and you will get what you're paying for. I have to interrupt you because we are after 7:30.
Yeah, okay.
No, but I'm gonna ask everyone, even if you're running late, to hang with us for a minute. Keep tasting the wines, because we've got a special important offer for you. And I am going to be, I'm damned if I'm not going to mention Perfect Pairings, because I remember working for Matt Prentice for 15 years, the Matt Prentice Restaurant Group, then called the Epicurean Group. And I made him buy a book for every chef and sous chef in our company. And we had multiple restaurants at the moment, because this book was ostensibly written by Evan for the public. And you know, those of you, especially now that you're housebound and want to know what goes with what, which is happening a lot in retail stores, plum wine team leaders can attest to this. This is the book to buy, because all the recipes are by our
my mom,
already mentioned mom, Joyce Goldstein. And if you read this cover to cover and retained 5 to 10% of it, you would know more than most chefs do about food and wine pairing, and that's the God's honest truth. And you will notice this copy has been, it's in Chinese. Has it been, how many languages, Evan?
Ironically, it's in the first language it was published in outside of English was Polish, believe it or not. It's in Mandarin. I know there are versions that are not necessarily legal in other languages that are popping around that didn't go through the right channels, but in this day and age with all that's hard to enforce.
But anyway, I love this book. I look at it every time I'm going to talk about food and wine harmony, especially that little cheat several pages you have in the middle, just in case you just want to remind yourself of the big do's and the big don'ts. Yeah. So I don't know if Li-Meng is still on with us or not, but this is Evan's current venture with his partner, Li-Meng Stroh. And they created, you know, by the way, we are talking about this because I insisted. Evan wasn't going to bring it up, but I'm lucky enough to be on a tasting panel. Stay tuned a little bit more about that. This is I'm going to let you shorthand it, but if you want to learn how to taste wine in a focused way, you'll notice what it says, Master the World, Taste with Focus, Taste Wine. Brilliant. Was that you or Li-Meng or someone else who came up with that?
No, it was a team effort. I think all of us in the office, and giving credit to Andrea and Carol and everyone else there too, we sort of mini focus group to come up with that. But that was the tagline that we ended up settling on. I think it speaks very truthfully to what we do. And
give me 1 and 2 sentences to explain to a normal human being what this is.
Yeah, it's a subscription-based blind tasting kit that can appear on your doorstep once a month, that allows you to taste out of 6 187 milliliter bottles, 6 different wines, different grapes, different countries, different places, different regions, subregions, etc., and do so in a manner that you can do it how you want. So you can either literally follow it to the T, which is to say you pour the wines blind, pour them into the glasses, try the wines, and then we have an entire online platform that people can follow. And they can either do the sort of easy version, kind of like options, what country, what grape, what region, what vintage, or there's a much more high intensive workout, which allows, what does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like, kind of thing. Or you don't have to use that at all. You could simply, when you're done, remove the sleeve, because they're all sleeved, so it's a blind tasting, and the back label will tell you exactly what the wine is if you don't want to do, you know, the big online thing. But it provides you the opportunity to grow your palate, to improve your discernment and about wines, to know that the wines, and this is where you help me out a lot, my dear, that the wines that you're tasting have been curated by 3 master sommeliers who sit down together and agree over a flight of Argentinian Malbec.
So stay tuned to that. This is not just for people taking exams.
Yeah.
This is for consumers who want to know, you know how you're always asking us, what do you taste? What should I look for? What should I find? What words do you use? This will help you tremendously. By the way, you want to tell them why this is Team Panda?
You'll have to remind me about how we got to Panda, but the original tasting group and to the day of how we put this together, and 2 of my soulmates and regular participants are Madeline and Tim. Madeline, you know, Tim Gazer on her right, my left, is an accomplished master sommelier, actually coming out with a book on tasting, which I'm really looking forward.
So note to self,
taster I know.
I get 2.5 points credit for this. I have been badgering him, hounding him, because go online, look up Tim Gazer's blog, which is written out of the depth of his heart and his generosity in wanting to help people pass blind tasting exams. However, he's such a great writer that we've been asking him to compile his blogs and, you know, curate them into a book that he tells me is not going to be out for Christmas. I'm sorry about that. Doesn't have a title for it yet, but stay tuned in the next several months. And he is wonderful friend, wonderful taster. And the reason we came up with Panda is because it was cute and we were laughing hysterically most of the time we were tasting.
And so we would make panda jokes. Yeah, that's right.
I think Andrea, one of your team members, or Li-Meng, you know, when we came to taste in San Mateo, provided us pens with pandas on them.
Yeah, they were so good.
Pandas cheer everybody up. And this, by the way, I asked for if we could do something generous for people who are attending this evening. All the registrants tonight, if you check this out, and I will send this panel to you, we'll get 10% off a Master of the World blind tasting kit, which is very generous. I can't tell you the amount of effort this goes into this. I talked to Li-Meng the other day, who trolled around with her phone or her iPad showing me the winery where the kits were being, you know, put together with the team that was making this happen. But it's well worth your while to check this out. And this is something that's not often offered to people who would like to register. But I can't speak highly enough. And it's not just because Evan is my dear friend. And it's not just because I'm part of the team that talks about these wines. It's because it's very useful. And it really makes you, you know how Dominique Lafon said that there is no politeness between him and Caroline, his partner and winemaker, when it talks about quality? You should hear me yelling at Evan and Tim that they're using esoteric language that normal human beings don't understand. Am I right?
You keep us grounded. You absolutely do. I think the other thing, and which leads me to something I was going to add, and as always, you segue me beautifully, is that you don't have to be a Jedi Knight in training to do this. And I think it's really important that your audience understands this, that if you're simply looking at, when I walk into, well, in the case of Plum Market, your wines are all good selections, but a lot of places you walk into, and you walk into the Phil Spector wall of Chardonnay, how do you know what to buy, right? And what I think anybody who purchases our kits, and once the reveals are done, once you rip off the sleeve, or once you go online to our platform and hit the reveal page and see the sheet pop up with what the wine is and what your notes were and what our notes as the tasting panel were, you can be rest assured that there was incredible diligence and incredible effort put into the curation of those wines, so
and arguments,
but that they are ultimately archetypal, group agreed wines that are classic examples of what that wine is supposed to be.
So you will get this from me, and this is thanks to not just Evan, but his partner Li Meng. And we're going to hang for at least 15 minutes, Evan, and answer questions. Y'all can unmute yourselves because you've been very, very, very patient in letting us chatter on with and to each other. But I have to mention that next week, and it's going to be a Friday, and it's going to be at the slightly barbaric time at 4 p.m. Eastern, because it's going to be Marilisa Allegrini's 10 p.m. in wherever she is in Florence. We're going to talk about the Veneto. So we're talking about Amarone. She's really a force of nature. Yes. And I'm going to leave you with one slide before we chat at, 7:45 p.m. First of all, Evan, I love you. I love Joyce. I love Barbara and your beautiful children. And thank you for being my friend through the decades. Unless you think we're really big deals, and we think, too highly of ourselves, both of us have been to Australia. And these are moments very near and dear to our hearts. Who is the little critter you're holding, Evan?
So this was at a dinner. This was very unexpected. And by the way, my teeth are blue because I've been barrel sampling Cabernet in Coonawarra all day. But this little critter, blue teeth. This little critter is a wombat, and this is a rescue wombat. So in Coonawarra, once a month, the community locally gets together. Coonawarra ain't that big. They get together, and everybody, they rotate around the responsibility, but they have sort of like a social hall, a community hall, a Rotary Club hall, if you will, and everybody signs up. They pay their $15, and the kitchen responsibility falls on one person. Everybody shows up. They all bring bottles of wine. One drinks wine and socializes for a while. Then they ring a bell, and you can turn your chit in for chicken, steak, whatever. And then you take your food, you sit down and enjoy
and your wombat, right?
Anyway, the community day that I was there, one of the women in the community who is the head of the equivalent of like the SPCA in Coonawarra had just taken in this baby wombat and basically passed around. When you're at your friend's house or a family gathering and they say, "Here, you want to hold the baby?" and they hand you the baby and all that. At this point, somebody passed me the wombat, and I held the wombat for actually a good while. The wombat was, by the way, between asleep and semi-awake the entire time. I think I held this wombat for about 30 or 40 minutes and had to reluctantly give it up to somebody because I was kind of having a love affair with this little baby wombat.
Well, I have to tell you that as much as I adore Murray, the koala, he has the name Murray, and Murray looks pretty much as big as I am, but he was actually rather light because he's fluffy. You will notice what he's chewing on. He smelled terrific because all he does for he's awake for maybe 4 to 5 hours a day, For 45, he's eating eucalyptus leaves and he sleeps a lot, but this particular koala for 45 minutes a day is a public relations koala. You take turns holding him. He has no problem with it. He munches eucalyptus. And I think that's my press photo until I stop needing press photos. So you all have hung with us for a very long time.
Thank you for
We are
joining.
going to ask you to hang with us if you want to, and especially ask Evan any questions. Me, you can get to anytime in Detroit or Chicago. But thank you very much for letting us share what's in our minds and more importantly, what's in our heart. Because again, in these times, friendship that spans, decades is going to get us through, right? I mean, other than Barbara and Joyce and I haven't seen each other, cheers to that. Cheers to everyone. L'chaim, to your good health. Yisihian. We haven't seen each other in over 6 months, but I think I'm sitting in their kitchen. I was there when they were redoing that kitchen, man. And if I remember correctly, Joyce Goldstein picked out all the appliances for this kitchen, and it was special indeed. So cheers to everyone. Hang with us if you'd like to. And thank you for, personally and selfishly letting me invite a dear, dear friend to share company from everywhere, but notably Michigan and Chicago. So cheers, Evan. Here's to whatever else you dream up. I'm in your slipstream in my heart and soul, cutting bread and pouring water in a dining room. But I'm glad that I can still taste wine effectively and give you and the Panda team hell when we taste together, because I know the words that normal human beings want to hear.
That's right. You
Right.
do. You do.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Everyone pretty much hung with us. We still have about 46 people. If anybody, I'm looking at the chat room finally again. Great stories. Thank you. I will actually get the recording of this to everyone. My team's gotten really good at it within several days, because actually we had almost 70 people sign up, Evan, and we had about 45 people hang with us. So some people can't make it. They're probably zoomed out.
But they can watch the record. I mean, a lot of people sign up simply to do it so they know they'll get the recording later too. I mean, everyone's got different time frames.
And I want to, again, remind everyone, I always do this. If you're sitting there going, I don't mind buying 4 wines, but how the hell am I going to consume 4 of them? Private Preserve is your best friend. It feels like an empty hairspray can. We sell it for like way under $10. And if you spritz the wine correctly, meaning a lot, jam the cork in, right? Or a DM cork, composed cork, which Evan is the ambassador for, and throw it in your fridge, chances are about 75% to 90% that it will hold indefinitely. Would you agree with that, Ev?
Absolutely. No, Private Preserve is an extraordinary product that's quietly been on the market for years. And with all the advent in wine preservation that they quietly move along. But for, somewhere between a $7 and $10 can, depending on what market you're in, you can fill up a lot of bottles and hold them for a long period of time.
Evan, he just came out with one for sparkling wine, and I tried it on Raventos, and it absolutely worked.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we've got what?
Questions, shoot from the hip. Yeah, let's get some questions.
Yeah, $7.99 a plum. Okay, there you go. What do we think of Corvin? You get to opine about Corvin, and you can unmute yourself if you want to.
Yeah, no, Corvin. Corvin's an amazing product. I remember when it was in its developmental stages, and our dear friend Peter Granoff was a consultant to them and remains so to the day when they originally got started. It's a great product, and for those of you who want to be able to check in on a wine and put in that surgical needle and try a little bit and then put the bottle back and forget about it for a while, it's great. I will tell you that literally the only things I've heard negative about it, and I've heard very few negative things about the Corvin, aside from the price of buying those little canisters over time, which can be expensive.
And the product itself is like what, $200?
Yeah. But is that if you keep jamming in the needle all the time, so if I'm thinking more for our friends who go out and taste wines, salespeople on the streets, after a while it doesn't completely seal, and if it is an older wine and you do get any sediment stuck in it, it can be problematic. But having said that, I think the pluses of it in terms of what it enables one to do definitely outweigh minuses of it, because your typical person is not jamming the thing in 12 million times. And it does permit you to get a glimpse into the future of what a wine will become every once in a while. So I think it's very successful. I think it does a very good job. And I think for your average person, the biggest single challenge to it is its price. It's not $9.99 for a can.
Right, and I steer away from it only because, you're looking at the girl who would be happy with white linen paper and a fountain pen. So, I struggle with technology a little bit, and that's why I like private preserve. Does anyone want to speak up about the wines? Did you have any comments about any particular ones you loved or didn't like? Don't be shy. This is an utterly safe zone. There are about 40 of you still on.
I'm wondering about why would private preserve have a different formulation for sparkling wine, and how does that work?
Thank you. I will ask Scott Shepard, who's the founder and maker of this. I don't know. He didn't explain it to me. He just sent it to me. And I used it on Faith to try it. And I kept a bottle of Rovento. See, they don't use the word cava, but they're, champagne method.
Right.
And it kept its integrity completely over 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah. So I'll ask him and I'll get back to you on that.
I did not know that.
Yep. I don't know what he did.
I'm interested that he doesn't use the word cava because his grandfather invented the word.
Yes.
And he didn't like the inheritance system and started his own place. So it's kind of rebelling against his grandfather.
Well, he's actually, and what he's really doing, and those of you who didn't see the webinar we did, it's on our YouTube channel. You can listen to Pepe Reventos. He didn't like the fact that commercial cava he didn't like the direction of quality it was headed to, and he didn't want to be associated. So he was openly admitting that he wanted to disassociate from the reputation of commercial cava. But
like the Anselmis in Suave.
Yeah,
huh?
Interesting.
Like the Anselmis in Suave.
They don't use Suave, right?
No, they don't.
Right.
I have a different Reventos friend who gives me a different story about him, but his wines are really good.
I love your kitchen, by the way.
Oh, he has the best kitchen, I know.
Killer kitchen.
Yeah. What are you making tonight, Richard?
I'm making a Southeast Asian sticky rice dish that I thought would be interesting to have with all of these dishes, all of these wines, because I'm not sure what it goes with. It has dried shrimp and Chinese sausage and bacon and Thai sticky rice. So
there's Evan's recommendation. Is it sweet? Do you put any sugar in it?
Evan's recommendation?
Flour and the bee.
My recommendation would be trying all four.
I don't disagree with you. I was just thinking about there. I think actually all four would work nicely. I think particularly picking up on the natures of that part of the world, as well as the fact that and one of the things that is important for you, I'm sure you obviously clearly know it, but for everybody, is don't feel obligated that if there's anything that's red in there, like Chinese sausage or something like that, to feel like you need to color code your thing. White wines, especially those with bright acid, if you've got something that's fatty, and let's face it, Asian sausages tend to have a fair amount of fat in them, the acids, if they're strong enough, which it is, as we discussed in that first white wine, are going to work splendidly with it. And the nature of the sort of more exotic flavor profile against some of those floral characters and fruit characters that you have in that wine should be quite fun.
Anybody else cooking something neat that they want to share so we can all feel, happily jealous, or opine about how the wines are striking you? This is an utterly safe zone. We are not recording anymore. You can say any damn thing you want. Just remember to unmute yourself if you want to speak up. Richard, thank you for your comments. Always appreciated.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Rapini.
We love the Malbec.
Oh, this is my cousin Flora and her best friend Michonne. Hello, beautiful ladies. How are you? By the way, I have to plug Uncork for a Cure, which is going to be virtual this year. Those of you who have attended this party in the past, this is what, the 5th year, Flora?
Yeah.
It is a stunningly effective benefit for breast cancer research that is put together by my dear, smart cousin Flora, is now going to be virtual, so look for it online. And you can get lots of yummy packages. I didn't expect to plug it, but how could I not?
No, it's okay.
It's from your heart, and also it's the Dinami Foundation. Why did you call it Dinami?
You can't say the rapini applied to everything.
It's the Greek word for strength. So
We were eating though with it, so.
And you're having rapini, did you say?
We're eating.
Eating rapini.
having what?
You're drinking the Malbec?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right now, Michelle and I, we love it. It's really yummy.
Depending on the wine.
It's nice and smooth, isn't it? But concentrated.
And John loves it too. So we're all drinking it right now. Everything.
John is Flora's husband. Hi, John.
This has been so great. This has
Thank you.
been so fun, and I would love this every week.
I would just tell you that Malbec is such a wonderful wine for the American, for our palates as a culture, because it's got the intensity, depth, and volume that people like, but the wines also have that polish and that veneer and that satininess that you talked about, Madeline, that people also don't like. You know, people, as a rule, unless you're cooking specifically for it, tannin can be an obstacle. And since so many of us like wines like that, we like volume, but we don't necessarily always want.
We don't want it to be bitter. We don't. Frankly, we're still a cocktail culture, and a lot of times we're sitting around drinking big reds without food. You know, this is not a bad thing. It's just an is thing. And the reality is, and you taught me this: protein, salt, and fat neutralizes the tannin in red wines. You don't have to neutralize a damn thing in Malbec.
Not with that.
Somebody mentioned rapini, which again you taught me. Talk about bitter greens and red wines.
Well, that's an interesting one. So
Isn't there quite an assortment tonight to go with these wines, including a rapini with pasta?
Oh, thank you, rapini pasta.
Cibo di rapa.
Yeah. But I think what's interesting when you're dealing with the world of vegetables in the bitter vein, and it could be everything from broccoli rabe to rapini to zucchini to some eggplant to all sorts of other things. You actually get two things you can play off of. One, clearly, you know, the brilliance that all white wines have is acid, and acid is the ultimate. You only have one horse to ride the acid horse. But the bitterness factor that's there, and Madeline, I think, was alluding to this, tannin is implicitly bitter, and if you have a bitter edge to a vegetable, you can actually play off it, and you can increase the intensity of the tannin to the intensity of the bitterness in the vegetable, in the dish, or whatever. I've actually played around with adding, whether it's gastriques, which are at once bitter and somewhat tannic at the same time, two tannins in wines against stuff like that. So if I'm particularly wanting to show off a red wine with it, one of the cards I have in my back pocket that I can pull and throw into the river, if you will, is always going to be a bitter green, because a bitter green can pull together a red wine in a way that you don't necessarily have to throw in proteins, red meat, stuff like that.
You're talking to the vegan vegetarian here that will have 2 bites of lamb, but absolutely, lamb is a vegetable, right? Those who've seen my Big Fat Greek Wedding know this, and it's true. But, you know, the bitter greens factor is really important when you're trying to bridge vegan vegetarian food, you know, with, you're talking olive oil, that's it, right? In terms of the fat. But that mouthfeel can be connected through the bitterness of dark greens, which is great. I don't think anyone can cook kale to the point where it's not chewy, Evan, but broccoli rabe does the trick, in addition to rapini. Anyone else want? We have a vote for a Lebanese food and wine tasting. Oh,
hello. You're like formerly like born of Detroit, Lebanese friends.
Amanda.
Amanda.
Amanda. Stella in Traverse City.
Missed you, Amanda. Missed you terribly.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I miss everybody. But yeah, my professional friends more than anything. But no, yes, Lebanese. Not just I think Lebanese food with wine. It doesn't have to necessarily be Lebanese wine, which is great too. But I think just it's a very tiny country. And we talked about your mom, Joyce. I don't know if she's still here because I can't see, but
Yeah.
The Mediterranean, that whole, people think Lebanon's in a desert. It's really not.
Yeah.
At all.
I think you bring up a
Amanda, aren't
brilliant.
you? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Ed.
no, I was going to say Amanda brings up a great point, and then I'll defer back to you, Madeline. But I think we get stuck on the grows together, goes together type thing, and we need to lose that because just because of wine, you don't have to have, to your point, Lebanese wine with Lebanese food. You don't have to have Chianti or Rosso di Montalcino with bistecca alla Fiorentina. I think if you look at the nature of the dish itself, ingredients, sauces, and all that, and the personality of the wine, and mimic the traits of a particular pairing, you can go anywhere you want, grape-wise, country-wise, or whatever.
And when I say goes, Madeline was first. Go ahead.
No, I was simply gonna, advertise the fact that you are collaborating on a dinner at Pernod with Liz Martinez, are you not?
Is that so crazy?
When is it happening?
Quattromani. At Pernod, I'll be there on the 28th, and then they're coming up on the 29th of this month.
So everyone look for that. Oh, if you send me the link, I'll put it in my recap.
I will.
So people can check it out, because we are supporting restaurants. You are our heroes.
We're getting really creative, but it's been fun. I actually recorded my first official podcast today, which is crazy.
Will you send it?
Oh, I will. Actually, I'll send an invitation because you're going to be a guest.
I am. She is.
But one of the things when you said what grows together goes together, I do like that phrase in a lot of ways, but not so much because it has to be a wine from the region and a food from the region. I like it because when you think in terms of the structures of the wine for the region, right? So it's not that it has to absolutely be whatever.
So what do you mean by the structure, like the tannin and the acid?
So I think acid, alcohol,
right?
All the things, right? Acid, alcohol, tannin, sugar.
Yeah.
But I think if you think in terms.
Yeah. No, I was going to say in the climate that allows these foods and wines to grow together simply needs to be thought of in context. Again, you can take your hats off, your color, your gendered colored whatever hat off, and just look at structures. Look at the architecture of it, and simply sort of say, you don't want to do something that's completely different, because more oftentimes it may work, but it may not. But if you look to sticking with mimicking structure and architecture, more often than not, you're going to end up with a pretty solid result.
So it is after 8 o'clock. I am going to.
Turning into a pumpkin?
We're turning into a pumpkin. I'm going to give us all a collective real hug, because Greeks don't do virtual. I will encourage any of you who still have that Mâcon in your glass to retaste it, because it is just starting to, do what Dominique Lafon does, which is it's Chardonnay at its best. Layers of apples and pears and blah, 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 with Caroline doing the winemaking. All of these wines are going to be available on the website, the Plum Market website, for at least another week, or just, tromp into the stores and find them. I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart for being such a welcoming, living room full of open-hearted people, for my dear friend Evan and his wife Barbara and his mom Joyce and his partner Lee Mang. And you can see why I am blessed beyond belief to have friends like this through my work life and into whatever murky, interesting, fun future the globe holds for us. But everyone stay healthy, stay safe, stay cheerful. And I will finish by saying, Evan, I'm sorry I'm cutting us off, but we could do this for 2 more hours, right?
There'll be a part
Thank you,
two.
my dear friend. No, part two. And maybe we have Tim on. You, me, and Tim.
There you go.
We do a Master of the World thing, and then we promote Tim's book when he comes up with a title for it, right? So that said, Siniyasas, which is, or Yasas, which is both hello and to your health in Greek. Ciao. What else do we say? Santé, to your health, right?
Ate breve, ate já, which is till the next time, or till briefly in Portuguese.
Ate já.
Ate já.
Yes.
And à la prochaine, as they would say
à la prochaine in French. Yeah. Thank you all for being supporters. You're just.
Hi, Paula.
Thank you, Madeline.
Cheers,
everyone.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Hi, Madeline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take good care, everyone.
Right.
Bye.
Good night.
Stay well.
Hey.
Stay
Good night.
well.